Well, good morning. It is good to see everyone here this morning. I know we have a smaller congregation this morning. There's a number of people out sick. And part of my family are part of the ones that are out sick. My wife and daughters are not here this morning. There was some illness among the little ones, and so they opted to stay home this morning. But nonetheless, it is good to be here. It's good to be able to come together and to worship the Lord. It's good to read the scriptures together. And, I find that I think maybe more as I get older, I look forward to coming and gathering with you here this morning and worshiping in this way. Today we're going to continue a sermon series that we began in December on technology and how we should think about technology as Christians. And today we want to specifically consider what is God's relationship to technology. Before we dive into that, though, just a quick recap. Some of you were perhaps not here the last time I spoke on this. We talked about last time about what is technology, and we considered the story of David and Goliath. And in that story, on one hand, we had Goliath, a soldier with modern technology, cutting-edge technology, you might say. And on the other hand, we had David, a shepherd boy, with perhaps a rudimentary technology, the sling. And what we discovered is that both of these technologies amplified the power of the person that was wielding that technology. But as we concluded that story, we really come down to this, that the story isn't really about David and his technology. It's not really about Goliath and his technology. The story is about God and his glory, and we see God acting sovereignly over that story. And we see that the story is really all about God and his strength and who he is. It's not the strength of David. It's not the strength of Goliath that is on trial there. And so today, we want to continue kind of along those same lines, but we want to ask the question, what is God's relationship to technology? Now, oftentimes when we think about technology, we have something in our mind, and it's probably a blinking LED light on a small gadget, maybe a smartwatch or a smartphone. It's something electronic, right? That's what we think about when we think about technology. And so probably the last thing that you would think about when you think about technology is tar. But today, our journey, we're going to begin the conversation here about sticky black tar. And I want us, as we consider this, to try to help answer our core question about what is God's relationship to technology. And how we answer that question is going to frame our relationship to technology. It's going to affect what innovations we're willing to adopt and what industries we're willing to work in. And it will probably set some guidance for how we use technology. And as we began tackling this question this morning, we're going to turn to Genesis, and we're going to go to Genesis chapter 6. We're going to look at verses 11 through verses 14 in Genesis chapter 6. This is a familiar story, kind of like David and Goliath. It's one that we grew up reading and considering as young people and as old people, and it's the story of Noah. Genesis chapter 6, verse 11 through 14. Here is what the scripture says. It says, "Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, For the earth is filled with violence through them. But behold, I will destroy them. I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. And there you have it. It's the word pitch, or another word for that is tar. And what we see is that a global rebellion against God is taking place. And when there's a global rebellion, it calls for a global response. God tells Noah he's going to destroy the earth. And he gives Noah the blueprints for a massive building project. Now, this building project is going to require human engineering and technology to build an ocean-worthy ship. Now, this is within a society where there have only been small boats used to navigate rivers, and so this ark is just in a completely different league. It's different than it exceeds any kind of categories of engineering that has taken place by the sheer size. It exceeds any practical use. But by sheer necessity, it forced Noah to begin blazing a new path of engineering and technology to build something that would require over a century to complete. Now, the final steps on completing this project was for Noah to gather tar. And where did he find tar? Well, perhaps even prior to the flood, perhaps there was coal, perhaps there was oil that was naturally existing, or perhaps he had to distill this tar from this pitch from pine. I'm not sure. Maybe some sort of tree resin or something like that. Whatever the case, Noah slathers the ark with thousands of gallons of tar. He does it on the inside, he does it on the outside, to keep the hull of the ship waterproof in the face of God's coming judgment. Now, most of us are very familiar with this story. So after Noah gathers his family and the animals into the ark and the flood comes, 40 days and 40 nights later, you know what happens? The ark touches down. And then we see in Genesis chapter 10, this takes place. Now, due to the extraordinary long lifespans, we see, some 150 years later, after the flood, the population of the earth, it could have easily grown to, say, 50,000 people. And you'll notice, beginning in Genesis chapter 9, after the flood, we see that God gives a covenant to Noah. He makes a covenant with Noah. It says God blesses Noah. And in that blessing, notice what he says. He says to Noah, "You're to be fruitful, you're to multiply and fill the earth." You see that in verse 1 of chapter 9. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And then we come to Genesis chapter 11. That's the text that Toby just read here a few moments ago. Genesis chapter 11. In the first verse of Genesis chapter 11, we see, now the whole earth had one language, and they had the same words. And so if you can imagine, there's 50,000 perhaps residents living on the earth, all with a single line of culture that ran back to Noah. They had one language, they used the same words, and they had started to make a home on earth. And then in verse 2 here it says, as the people migrated from the east. They found the plain, the land of Shinar, and they settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had bricks for stone and bitumen for mortar. And here we have this word again, bitumen or tar. The Babylonites discovered tar. And perhaps this was naturally occurring tar. But what's even more noteworthy than the tar is that they invented a way to fire bricks. Fire-hardened bricks. This was a novel tech, and it was something that led to new possibilities. Now, as I was studying this, some commentators have pointed out that the citizens of this place, they did not first decide to build a tower and a city. No, the first thing that happens is that they discovered a new technology, fired bricks. And upon discovering this new technology, then they decided to build a tower and they decided to build a city. And you see, there's something about technologies that open up our imaginations. And they open up new possibilities. And sometimes that precedes our sense of what could be done or should be done. But out of this novel tech idea, fired bricks, and this natural discovery of tar, comes this new dream comes this new urban dream of what is possible. Verses 4 and 5 here in chapter 11, it says, "Then they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower and its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth.'" Notice what they're doing. They don't want to be dispersed over the whole earth. They want to make a name for themselves. "And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built." And so with technological possibilities, man breaks forth with aspirations. Let us build. Let us make. And there's something within us, an impulse that demands that we innovate. And so what we see here is in unison, humanity struts forward to collaborate on a building project of autonomy. This is not a tower of mere reputation. This is a tower of independence. The desire to definitely be separated from God. It is to reject God's commission to go spread across the globe. Man engineers a tower in the sky. And so it doesn't take God long to notice this rebellion. And you can see the sarcasm in verse 6. He descends from heaven. He bends his knee, puts his cheek to the ground, and squints to see the tower. Divine sarcasm. Sorry. Verses 6 and 9, it says, "And the Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them." Verse 7, "Come, let us go down," and they are confused their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore the name was called Babel, because the Lord confused the languages of the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of the earth. And so we see this attempt to create some sort of utopia, but God had told the first family, Adam and Eve, to spread and fill the earth. And then he called the second family here, Noah, to do the same. And for some reason, mankind collected itself into a herd and settled into a unified city and tower But that wasn't God's plan. The problem with Babel, essentially the city temple of human rebellion, it was a religious center. Babel was the new global epicenter of human worship, a place to dethrone God and enthrone humanity in its place. But it's interesting to note that these aspirations of the Babylonites for human engineering and everything that goes into Babel, it doesn't make God insecure. What it does do is it sets man on a new path of self-confining and self-destruction. Man's increasing ambition and power doesn't threaten God. It threatens man himself. Because the more power that we're able to concentrate, the more harm that we're able to do to ourselves and to the world. All right, so let's just talk through Babel here just a little bit. This is 150 years, roughly, after the ark was built. So to give you some perspective of what that looks like, it's about the same amount of time between us and the Civil War. The Civil War happened about 160 years ago, right? Most of us are familiar with the Civil War. Most of us know history and stories about the Civil War. Some of us might even have artifacts from the Civil War. Maybe you have a bullet. You can go buy those at the antique malls around here. So we can actually hold on to things that were from the Civil War. So these people of Babel, they've made this unique discovery, and they figured out how to make fire-baked bricks, and these bricks are designed to hold up under the harshest and the hardest weather conditions, and they're stable, and they're strong, and they're meant to endure for ages. And then it says that they're pasting these bricks together with tar, with bitumen. They've perhaps found this somewhere in the Middle East. Maybe there's oil oozing from the soil, or maybe there was some coal that they found. I'm not sure how they made the tar, but scholars will tell you that using tar to piece together bricks, it's kind of like trying to build a skyscraper with steel beams and duct tape, if you really think about it. So why would you do that? Well, consider 150 years ago, Noah used tar on the ark. Why did he use tar on the ark? He used tar on the ark to seal the ark, to protect it from water. And so this was public knowledge passed down from generation to generation. And this incredible story that's been passed down from generation to generation of this technological achievement, the building of the ark, it no doubt inspired others to make advances in technology. And so it's very likely that this colossal ark filled humanity with engineering aspirations. And the second thing that we need to consider is that the people growing up post-flood, they knew God's judgment on sinful humanity. Those who rebelled against him. Everybody must have known this. And so if you're going to build a tower to dethrone God and to break free of God, then you better be ready. You better be ready for judgment. You better be ready for God's rage to once again pour down from the skies in a catastrophic flood. And so what do? You harden your bricks with fire. And then you glue them together with tar so that your tower is watertight. And once your tower is watertight, then you can stand on top of your roof and you can wave your fist at the heavens and say, "Good luck washing us away now." And so this is human engineering that is meant to thwart God's course. And we know the story. God judges them. He dethrones them by confusing their language, their single language, and he disperses them across the globe, forcing them to do what he intended for them to do. two major things to consider as a result of this judgment on Babel. The first thing is that multiplying languages and spreading mankind across the globe, God introduced new global networks and technological communications. He introduced travel, he introduced shipping, and these industries, because of this, are now inevitable. And the second thing that we notice is that by multiplying these languages and spreading man across the globe, God has introduced this new global tension among human beings. And believe it or not, it's a tension that actually protects us from our future technological innovations. If you love learning languages, you know that language is more than a dictionary. Every language has a logic that connects the culture. Whole world views are reflected in a dialect. And so every culture, it produces its own musical sound. Every culture, it has its own design for bread, own shape of bread. Different languages represent different cultures and unique ways of designing cities or towers or homes. And so what God has done, he's essentially reprogrammed the people of Babel, their sense of self, their sense of relational connections, the way they view the world. God has introduced just 100 new ways of thinking about the world. And those new thoughts, they produce new religions. People aiming to overthrow God, they're scattered and they produce competing idols and tribal deities in their own image. But there's one key takeaway. God keeps man from forming truth that is valid for all men. And so moving forward, man's truth is only partial. And it's always going to be contested. Okay, so what does this have to do with technology? Well, this disharmony trickles down into how given cultures create and use or reject certain innovations. So for Babel, instead of having one unified way to create and build a tower, it becomes a city of 100 opinions of how we ought to build a tower and how we ought to build a city. And so in this moment, God creates drama into humanity by making people think in different ways and making people want to engage the world in different ways. And these differences, they're so potent that it restrains mankind from all adopting one single technology, one single innovation. And so on the one hand, you may interact with somebody like Elon Musk, who's all about modern technology, and you may interact with somebody who's an Amish person who's just anti most of our modern technology. But the question we want to answer today is, what is God's relationship to technology? And so we see two things in these stories. We see the story of Noah. In the story of Noah, God commanded Noah to use human innovation and technology. And he writes this grand story of redemption in the use of technology. And in the use of technology as it advances. But here in the story of Babel, we see God squashing the use of technology. We see him squashing technology in the face of human self-glorification. He introduces this tension and utterly destroys human collaboration that existed up till this time. Now, in chapter 11 of Genesis, if we stop with verse 6, and if we miss the sarcasm in verse 6 in this story, you might have a picture of God's relationship to human innovation as something that looks like Homer Simpson. And he's in a control panel of a nuclear plant during a meltdown, and he's scuttling about all frightened, yelping and unable to fix anything, and his attempts at pushing random buttons and pulling random levers sets him up to fail, and there's going to be an impending meltdown. And if you stop there and if you think this is the story of God, perhaps you have that image in mind. Maybe you have an image of God being defenseless. Maybe he's aloof, surprised, alarmed, even threatened. Unfortunately, there are many Christians that kind of have this attitude of God. But I believe God is more than that. And for us to get a little better perspective of that, I want us to turn to Isaiah chapter 54 now. Isaiah chapter 54. And there's two verses that we want to consider. Two verses 16 and verses 17 in Isaiah chapter 54. And here the scriptures tell us, speaking of God, behold, I have created the smith who blows the fires of coal and produces a weapon for its purpose. I have also created the ravenger to destroy. And then the first part of verse 17, no weapon that is fashioned against you shall succeed. So in these verses, there are three rather incredible claims that are made. First, it says that God creates the creators of weapons. The second thing that it says is that God creates the wielders, the people that use those weapons. And then number three, it says that he governs the outcomes of those weaponized warriors, the ravengers. So let's consider that just for a moment. The smiths, the ancient blacksmith, it was an elite technical class in the ancient world. Blacksmiths led the charge of human innovation for centuries. You especially see this in the ages of the Old Testament. Smiths were people, they would jealously guard their secrets. They would adhere to a rigid system of ethics. Their work included traditions and ceremonies and rites of purification. They did fasting and meditation and prayer and sacrifices in their acts of worship. They kept rituals over their smelting and forging processes. They even at times offered animal sacrifices. Now, in folklore, iron objects were traditionally used to protect you against witchcraft, to protect you against evil spirits, to protect you against malign influences. And the tools of the smith forge, they were handled almost with a holy reverence. So his hammer, his anvil, his furnace, they were centers of the ritual, almost like a temple and a priest. They would use meteorite, iron called metal from heaven. And so the blacksmith almost had this role of a mediator standing between the iron of heaven and the people of earth. They would forge tools of war, tools of commerce, tools to ward off spirits. And often their inventions would, as we talked about in the last message, they would amplify the human power. They made the warrior, the nation's army, more fierce, more deadly. And so smiths stood at the center of ancient tech industry. And for some people, they were almost like saviors of sorts. They were masters of iron makers, of ancient warcraft technology, creators of power and of safety. And yet here in our text today, it tells us that God reigned supremely over every part of that. The blacksmith, yes, he creates a powerful sword. But God creates the blacksmith. God is the one who introduced the skill of metalwork into human history. And so God sanctioned the forge and the anvil. And God mixed the meteorites, metal, and he throws them to earth. And so this whole metalsmith thing owes its origin to God, and it serves the purpose of God. Now, perhaps that's an easy pill to swallow, but what about the Ravager? Because God's sovereignty doesn't just stop with the innovator. His omnipotence carries to those who not only create the weapons, but those who wield the weapons. God makes the sword wielder. He makes the Ravager, the destroyer. Now the word that is used here, the word create, says, "Behold, I have created." That's the same word in Hebrew. It's called bara, B-A-R-A. And it's a very specific word, and it's reserved for God's work of creation. In other words, God is the sole originator of it. So here the sole originator of the smith, here the sole originator of the Ravager is God. He creates it effortlessly. He doesn't need ingredients. He governs over all creation. He governs over sin. He governs over evil. He is sovereign in this way. And so if this is true, then the Ravager's destruction is sanctioned by God. Now, this is a sobering truth, because not only does God govern over butterflies and fluffy puppies and healing technologies and life-saving medications, he also wields a greater and more comprehensive governance over everything. God brings well-being, and he creates calamity. You see that in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. God creates calamity. And this is the same word, bara, used for God's work in creation. God is the sole originator of it. And so the writers of the scriptures here are saying, there is no one like our God. Blessed be the name of the Lord. He's providential over the intent of termites. He's providential over the intent of rattlesnakes. He's providential over chaos, even when the destroyer wields the latest tech advances of destruction. So why are we saying all of this? It doesn't make us feel very powerful, and that's probably part of the goal, but it prepares us for verse 17. Where he says that no weapon that is fashioned against you shall succeed. You see, brothers and sisters, if you want to believe that verse, no weapon that is fashioned against you shall succeed, then you better believe the previous verses that God is in control over everything that is happening. You can't have one without the other. How can God make this claim? His claim is made because he governs and he creates the Ravagers of the world. His claim is made because he governs the innovators of the world. The most technologically outfitted, power-wielding people and organizations and things are given that power and their purpose governed entirely by God. Now, most of us would like to just stop and say, but the world would be a lot safer place and the church would be a lot safer place if there were no Ravagers. Why do we have Ravagers? But that's not how this text works. Instead, the reasoning goes like this: because God creates and wields the destroyers inside the fallen world, his people should be confident in his protective mercies. God governs human innovation, even the destroying ones. God is unchallenged. He is unmatched in his supremacy. He creates light. He reigns over everything, even ravenous warfare. He has a secret will. And that secret will raises up and wields big tech as he sees fit. And so be confident in this. The Ravenger's never going to stop the church. Now, it doesn't mean that as Christians you're never going to experience harm. You certainly will. You see, with technology, everything is amplified, and we live in a massively amplified technological age. And we see the mishandling of power with technology. Just a couple of stories here. In the country of Wales, they created this massive pile of mine waste, and it created a mudslide, and it killed 116 children. Technology's not great that day. Or in India, there's a pesticide manufacturing gas leak, and it killed thousands of people and infected 500,000 people. Technology not having a great day. Or medications like thalidomide that was prescribed to pregnant women to offset pregnancy pains and discomfort, and it led to tens of thousands of babies being born with unspeakable physical deformities. Technology not having a great day. Or Chernobyl, the nuclear disaster that permanently evacuated and poisoned a city, all started by a human test that went wrong. Technology not having a great day. These are real tragedies. These are people that were hurt, and they call for real tears, and they demand a reform in our practice. But let us not think that God was absent in all of those things. God was not absent in those moments. The reality is that God is present even when our technology destroys. He is present, and he is good, bringing about every intentional evil Ravenger, or by every accidental evil from a technology disaster. He is bringing about good according to his purpose, even when you and I cannot immediately see it happening. And so God creates the Ravengers, and they do real harm, but they can't destroy God's people. Okay, so here's the point. You can get all caught up in technological discussions about the most powerful technologies in the world, who's inventing them, how they're threatening the earth, with their innovations, but don't assume that that's falling outside of God's governance. According to Isaiah 54, verses 16 and 17, we know that God creates and he governs the most powerful technologists. Verse 16 of Isaiah 54, there's an emphasis. It says, behold, and then it's verified by a repeated personal pronoun and a particular verb for creation. I have created bara, B-A-R-A, bara. I have created the smith. I have created the Ravenger. And so smiths and Ravengers, they showcase God's unique work. They showcase his unmatched majesty. Human tech is about God. The world's great innovators who are working right now in a lab or a factory or a hangar or a space station, they are there by divine appointment from God. See, God is the genius of human innovation. He is the creator of all human inventors. Before they are makers, makers are made by God. And so no matter if you're a tech enthusiast or you're a tech skeptic, no matter where you find yourself, I just want to encourage you to rest in the fact that God is sovereign over all that is happening, the good and the bad. When you face a fear about technology, remember that no weapon that is formed against you will stand. Let us learn from Noah that at times God is going to command us to use something like technology. And when that happens, let's do it. But let us also remember the story of Babel. And let us remember that when technology becomes something that is used to replace God, that it is wrong, that it is evil, and that it is sin. And you should not let technology have that role in your life. And so what does God think about technology? That was our question for today. What is his relationship to technology? Well, he's the creator of it. And so he's very connected with it and very much a part of it. I look forward to our discussion time and hearing your thoughts. I appreciate your attentiveness and listening this morning.